give a little bit of conceptual framework to the topic today, and then we will also take some live examples of how we went about doing financing the sanitation sector per se, particularly FSSM. Now, basically, I will speak about a little bit on business models and private-public partnership in FSSM. I want to de-jargonize this space because many a times when we speak about PPPs, we use certain terms that actually, from a practitioner's point of view, it actually it can put them off. So I would like to speak from a typical engineering lens or a typical practical practitioner's lens, so that we have a common understanding of this subject. Now, why we went about doing looking at public-private partnership in this space? Because we have done this from a practical lens. We have done this in Telangana as well as in Andhra. So let me speak from that particular lens, why we went about looking at PPPs in this space. There are three compelling reasons why we thought we would look at PPPs. Number one, both the states were in desperate need of capital investment. This was not supported by SBM, SBM1. Hopefully SBM2 will give support to this, but there was no loose money available, though the states have prioritized sanitation. As we know, there are many other competing demands. Why not health? Why not education? Why not toilets? Why not roads? Why not drains? So in all these competing demands, we need to situate FSTP and FSM. So it's not always easy to get loose money available for investment. So one of the reasons why we looked at public-private partnership is for financial requirements. We wanted the private sector finance to come, but that's not the only reason. The second reason why we thought we would bring private sector is the technology and innovation that they can bring. This is an emerging area, and there's a lot of technological improvements that we can bring. For example, how do I reduce pathogens? In a conventional system, pathogen removal is not always easy. And this is true for STP as well as FSTP. So because we don't have standards, but the states have decided that we need to have a technology, and the technology should be adaptable, scalable, but also deals with certain requirements, for example, pathogen reduction. So the private sector was considered because they can bring a lot of innovations. And the third reason why the state looked at public-private partnership in this particular space, particularly on the FSTP space, is a belief that public-private partnerships and private sector in particular can bring in greater accountability if it is monitored well. What do we mean by greater accountability? For example, if it is a conventional public sector project, if the project fails or if the project doesn't deliver results as per the desired outcomes, then who will be accountable? Is it the mayor accountable, or is the municipal commissioner accountable, or is the engineer accountable? Who is accountable? Or the regulator, Pollution Control Board accountable? So the accountability lies with everybody, hence there is no accountability. Hence, in a PPP, the accountability can be easily well defined. That if you don't achieve this certain outcomes in terms of environmental standards or any other parameters that we define, then the payments need not be paid to them. Their payments are linked to performance, hence that brings in greater accountability. Many of you are from Namami Gange, you went for hybrid annuity models. It brings in, as you know, many STPs are not completely functional and nobody is accountable. Whereas in the NMCG program, now that you have structured PPPs, if the project doesn't deliver desired results, then the payments will not be paid by NMCG or it will be delayed. So PPPs can also enhance accountability. So apart from bringing finances, apart from bringing innovations in technology, it can also, if it is structured well, it also can bring greater accountability to the table. Hence, the states, many states, and particularly the states I'm speaking where I thought I would give you live examples, they have chosen these three reasons why they went for public-private partnership, because certain skills are not available, technological skills are not available in the public sector also. So that's also one of the reasons. Now, there are different types of public-private partnerships or options. I'm not going to bore you with all this, but these terminologies are important for practitioners. We can have a simple works contract or a service contracts, and we can have a full privatization, that's other extreme. It's also called divestiture. But many a times we go for somewhere in between, where private sector can be brought in to build, enhance, operate, transfer the assets, and for delivering those outcomes and performance, they get paid. So based on the extent of private sector participation, there are different formats of PPPs are available. And this is important for practitioners to know. PPP is not just BOT. Often we think BOT means PPP. No, there are many shades of public-private partnership. For example, we have a toll road that comes under concession contracts where the private sector brings in capital investment, operation and maintenance, and then the user pays directly. Whereas nowadays we are going for annuity contracts where the private sector brings in capital investment, operation and maintenance. Irrespective of the vehicular traffic on the road, the government pays them annuities. So that de-risks the private sector's investment and operational related issues. So this is very important for us to know what are the different shades of PPP. Now, in the case of FSM, there are different types of arrangements are emerging in our country, and we can pick and choose based on the local context. For example, we can have public-private partnership end to end. For example, in municipal solid waste management, from door-to-door collection to processing, there are contracts available. There are contracts available only for processing, waste to energy or composting. Likewise, even in FSM, we can have contracts ranging from desludging, transportation, and treatment as a single contract. Or we can have only treatment as a separate contract, and transportation will be dealt by another agency. The transportation can be dealt by private sector or public sector, and the waste can be delivered to a treatment plant which is sort of managed by the private sector. So based on the appetite of the state and the city and their ability to combine it or unbundle it, we use the word bundled and unbundled. Locally, for example, in Andhra and Telangana, there is a vibrant, unregulated private sector in the transportation space. So the governments have decided not to touch it, not to create unnecessary confusion. Let them operate their business, let us regulate. But as far as the treatment is concerned, processing is concerned, they have decided to go for public-private partnership. So based on your local context, we can decide how we want to structure it. Now, please understand there are a couple of motivational reasons why the states have chosen. The states have chosen the certain fundamental principles. For example, FSSM is a public service. It's a public health issue, and it is a responsibility of the state and the ULB to pay for it and to make sure it is delivered. So they have chosen that let the citizens not pay for it directly. Let the state and the ULB take care of this service. So that is the model they have chosen. Long-term asset maintenance is considered to be very important for the government, because from the past experience, they found that a lot of STPs were built. Now they are dysfunctional because of poor operation and maintenance, poor asset management. Hence, they have chosen long-term asset maintenance as a very critical principle. Capital for assets as well as operational efficiencies are very, very important. Efficiencies are important, technological innovations are important, and performance and quality standard compliance shall be important. These were the 5 principles that the governments have deployed in delivering in going for public-private partnership. Now, what they did, I don't want to again complicate the matter. So they have used what is called a hybrid annuity model, one of the variants of the public-private partnership, wherein the government, the private sector brings in full capital investment for the project. The duration of the project is 10 years. The capital investment as well as O&M responsibility is with the same private operator, and 50% of the capital investment will be paid during the construction period, that is 6 months, and the balance 50% of the capital cost along with the operation and maintenance cost will be paid in 38 equal quarterly installments. And the payment is validated by the third-party agency called independent engineer with regard to performance. And the payments are made in this case by the state. It can also be made by the ULB, but in this case they have chosen, in Telangana for example, state pays for it. Now this is the structure. Now there is a SPV has to be created by each operator, so that this money will not be used for real estate. This money will not go for something else. They have multiple businesses, these operators, so that it is properly ring fenced. And to give comfort to the private sector, an escrow account is created. Theoretically, 3 months of advance payment is positioned in the escrow account so that the private sector feels comfortable कि उनका payment सही ढंग से आ जाए. Now the reality is very different. I will speak about it little bit. So the private sector will construct, operate for 10 years. 50% of the capital cost will be delivered during the construction period, and the balance 50% will be paid along with the O&M for 10 years. Now, why is it done? Because the private sector, as they say in a very common language, there is a positive interest of the private sector in the throughout the life of the project, or there is a skin in the game of the private sector, so that sector designs well, operates well, and payments are validated and by the third-party agency. Now, 76 ULBs have been taken up in Andhra and 71 in Telangana. They've organized in 7 clusters to increase the viability of the package. Otherwise, these are small projects. Big players were not willing to come. So we clustered them. Each package has about 10 FSTPs. So 7 clusters, 7 tenders were released. And each operator can bid not more than 3 tenders. So then each of these places should have a quality lab per cluster. Then they should have some green belt. All those conditions have been provided with. Every cluster should have a training. Every FSTP should have a training facility, a lab. All those which are necessary have been provided as part of the tender. It took almost 1 year to nurture this program. And the impact of this whole process is that a total amount of 250 plus crores of private sector investment has been unlocked. This is very, very important. So private sector money is available, but the confidence is not available. So this process has enabled private sector resources to come out for this FSM. So people say that, this sector cannot be funded, it can be funded by the private sector. Now, the impact of this is that it is creating employment, it is creating public health improvement. Very importantly, it is also bringing in worker safety and livelihoods, because in the past, This was operated informally. Now it's a formalized structure. All of them are medium scale industry or MSMEs. So these conditions have been, as part of the contract, these conditions were provided with, and also minimum wages. All these safety, health, and environmental standards are part of them. Now, the bid project cost varies based on the size of the cluster. Just to cut the story short, it is not theoretical. It is actually projects are coming out. I keep posting in the picture. Every month, at least 6-7 projects are getting inaugurated in Telangana. Now, in Andhra, there was a cash flow problem. There was a change in the leadership and there was a cash flow problem. Now, this is one of the biggest lessons that, that has been learned, that private sector is willing to come, provided we treat them as a partner, provided they get payments in time. This is a one big challenge that we experience in this PPP arrangement. Now, there are other models of public-private partnership. This is attempted in Hyderabad, a performance-based service where desludging as well as sewage cleaning or sewer cleaning, inspection chamber cleaning is also given to the private sector, 90 different contracts as part of the mechanization. Now, per kilometer of cleaning, they get payments. It is a performance-based service contract. Then these workers have become entrepreneurs, and this model is now replicated in Delhi and Punjab and other places. Now in Hyderabad, we have done another interesting thing recently. The private sector operators are not funded, but they are regulated now. More than 100 desludging operators are regulated. These are desludgers who are actually desludging septic tanks. They're all regulated with a clear tariffs. It's a tariff like what we have for water supply. High income or high commercial and institutional communities are charged a little more, and then it is cross subsidized with the low income communities. This has been launched by recently by the minister, and it is actually doing very well. So the private sector engagement need not always be only for money. The existing private sector can be nurtured and they can be regulated, and then pro-poor reforms can also be introduced. As I said, like in the municipal solid waste management, we are now attempting a bundled contract, which is desludging, transportation and treatment end to end, hopefully in Warangal. This is work in progress. It is not done. So all I can say is that PPPs are viable and scalable even in a difficult small FSSM space. However, PPP operators have to be respected, have to be worked with, have to be nurtured, and they are partners in development. She or he is not just a contractor where they develop and leave. They have to be with you, and we have to be with them for the next 10 years or whatever may be the tenure of the contract. Timely approvals and timely payments are super important. Indian private sector is phenomenally vibrant, provided the government and the public sector has sensitivity to make the payments in time, approvals in time. Both bundled and unbundled contract can be structured in India in our municipalities. Pro-poor tariffs is essential for sustainability of FSSM. Otherwise, the current uniform tariff model is absolutely inappropriate. So we need to ensure that in these PPP contracts, we need to bring in pro-poor tariff. Capacity of the ULBs and transaction advisory support is very, very important. ULBs often are not completely conversant with this. So we need to really help them in structuring it properly. That's where the transaction advisory support is very important. In this case, we have extended transaction advisory support. As I said, private sector is also not wisdom all. They have to be nurtured. We have to build trust. As I said, there is a saying in the private sector conversations. Private sector jo hai tarboos hai, it's like a jackfruit, and the government is a knife. Whether the knife falls on the private tarboos or tarboos falls on the knife, it is a private sector which is cut. We have to understand that So they have to be nurtured, they have to be properly handled, trust has to be built, and then I think it works very well. So as I said, sanitation can be a new IT for India, can create quality jobs if we can nurture this public-private partnership systematically. That's the limited experience of a couple of states that we have been working with. But someone like Manas and Mr. Tanveer, they have seen much more larger canvas, and from a private sector lens they have seen. And I would like now invite, what is the order, Dr. Malini? We will go with Tanveer, right?
Yeah, so
Yes,
that's what we thought the sequence would be.
Okay, so now I would invite Mr. Tanveer to share his experience, and then we will take up the questions for him. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Cherry. Yeah, and good evening, everyone. So I'm sharing my screen. So I'll share the experience from Bangladesh, and I hope the participants will enjoy, and we all can learn from this one. Is that the presentation? Sure. Can you see my presentation? Sorry.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
You
Okay,
can make it
thank
full
you.
screen.
Yeah, just okay. Thank you very much. So this is Muhammad Tanveer Ahmed Chaudhary. I'm working in SNB Netherlands Development Organization in Bangladesh as a sanitation business advisor. SNB Bangladesh started working in Bangladesh since 2014, and with support from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Netherlands governments, we are implementing Fika Plus Management Project, the urban sanitation program, in 6 cities. That is Gazipur, Kustia, Jhinaidaho, Joshore, Benapol, and Khulna. So following, we followed citywide principles, that is citywide inclusive sanitation principles that we are following. That's to provide safe sanitation to the city dwellers. So I started with I'll directly jump into the PPP contracts, because this session is actually mainly focused on PPP contracts in our intervention cities, and I also do have a limited time actually, so I'll not get much time. So as Professor Chiri mentioned earlier, so that's the thing. So I will start in the Jhinaidaho municipality. That's Jhinaidaho municipality. I think this is the first municipality in Bangladesh who came in PPP contracts in Bangladesh and privatized the services. That is they followed the bundled contract. That means emptying, transportation, and treatment is outsourced to one private operator. So and they followed the government tendering procedure, after bidding process, local NGO Aid Foundation got the contracts in 2017. So since November 2017, Aid Foundation is providing the services in Jhinaidaho municipality. So here you can see in the slide that the Aid Foundation is responsible for the promotional activities, awareness to the household level. Then they are the collecting orders and emptying services, transportation and treatment services also responsibility of the Aid Foundation. Whereas Jhinaidaho municipality, as a local government institution, they are actually act as a regulatory agency. So the service monitoring, supervision, everything is done by the Jhinaidaho municipality. And Jhinaidaho municipality also imposed sanitation tax to the city dwellers as a 5% sanitation tax imposed, because the existing infrastructure Jhinaidaho municipality has, they are providing the services with only 2 vacuum tanks and 1 treatment tank. The treatment tank capacity is 36 cubic meter per day. So with these resources, the city can cover only 50% of the demand. That means they will require further investment on this one. So thinking on this one and considering this background, and Jhinaidaho municipality decided to impose sanitation tax, because the operating cost is done by the Aid Foundation, the service is done by the Aid Foundation, but the future investment that will come from this sanitation tax. So the fund is accumulating now. When the municipality will have the sufficient fund, they will procure new vacuum tax, and also investing on constructing a new treatment plant or expansion of the existing treatment plant. So this is the Jhinai model currently. Then I will go for the PPP model in Kustia. This is a slightly bit different from Jhinai. Here, the municipality followed the unbundled contracts. That means the two contracts they are implementing here. One is for emptying and transportation services, which is provided currently by Aid Foundation, and another one is the treatment and production of co-compost. Because Jhinai has the reuse facilities, they are producing co-compost. So outsourcing of the treatment plant is done in 2016, and the licensed organic fertilizer company, namely Environmental Resource Advancement Services, ERAS is actually responsible for operation and maintenance of the treatment plant and production and marketing of the co-compost. So this model is actually for the sustainability of the treatment plant issue. If you see the operation and maintenance of the treatment plant, here the reuse facilities actually be helpful for the private operator for long-term sustainability. That's the thing, and two private sector is playing simultaneously, and there is no issues created yet. And then I will go for another city, and because the cities are progressing. Well, sorry, I would like to compare the two cities contracts here. You can see Jhinai is one bundle contract, one contract they are following. Emptying transportation, the whole value chain is covered by one private company. Kustia have a two private operator. The Jhinai has the 3 years contract, whereas Kustia they get 5 years contract. So tariff revision of tariff is not done in Jhinai, but in Kustia revision of tariff is done, and they impose pro-poor tariff. They consider the pit latrine as a poor, and pit latrines users are getting reduced tariff for the emptying and transportation services. So fecal sludge collection ratio, there's a collection ratio because the demand is not so much in these two cities. So to create the demand, and the municipality set a target, the fecal sludge collection ratio. So to reach 100% ratio, where Jhinai they didn't actually set the target, but in Kustia they set the target for fecal sludge collection ratio. And to monitor the services of the private operator, key performance indicator. So this key performance indicator imposed in Kustia, but Jhinai that was not imposed, because Jhinai the outsource was done in 3.5 years back, but Kustia the outsource done in 2020. That's why slowly we are improving, and city also learning from the other cities' experiences. Then I will discuss on a bit on the Khulna experience, because Khulna, the city is ready for outsource. They initiated the tendering process in 2019, end of 2019, and the city is thinking of the 5 years contract, and the tender was floated, but and they received 5 proposals from the interested bidder. But the tender evaluation and the completion of the contract not yet completed, but due to their internal, the city's internal decision, that's why it's been delaying. But we are expecting them by end of 2021. The city will go for will engage the private operator in Khulna as well. You can see this is the Khulna City Corporation treatment plant. This is 180 cubic meter capacity treatment plant they have. So it's a big treatment plant they are operating currently. Then when I say the last 3 cities discussion, I was actually mentioned that that was actually outsourced. When you say the investment come from private operator, that is not yet happened in the last 3 cities, because they only operating the services. O&M cost is only covered. But in case of Joshua city, we are thinking in a different way. And the city also agreed on this one. That's the pure PPP model, and Joshua municipality is expecting the investor to come and bid for this one. And the position is that they have currently 5 backotechs and 1 treatment plant, very small treatment plant, 8 cubic meter per day, which can only cover 9% of the city, the treatment plant. And the Vacutech will cover 49% of the city. But the actual service you can see here, currently the city cannot actually collect the sludge and also cannot treatment the sludge. So where they will require 5,000 USD 500,000 USD to invest or to construct the infrastructure facilities and also procuring new aqueducts. So the tendering documents all are ready, and some of the private investors they also showed interest to come into the to come and operate the services in Joshua Municipality. But the problem is the private investor they are actually willing to come in the and serve and provide the services. But the problem, the risk is working with the municipality. They always feel the risk of the working with the municipality. That minimize the risk, and long-term contract is required. So thinking this one, Joshua will go for 10 years contract. So short-term contract always private investor feel risk that whether the time is covered for the return of investment, because you know that the IRR, if the IRR is not done, then the private investor will not come into the bidding. So that's why Joshua is going to will go for pure PPP model, and the PPP authority under Prime Minister's office, they are actually responsible for bidding and all the things. So all the tender documents are ready. So endorsement is pending so far now. So that's the experiences in a nutshell I discussed in our cities. If you have any question and answer, then I can give you this, or the question and answer session can come later. Thank you, Professor Cherry, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tanvir. I think this is fantastic, if I may say so, because you have sort of experimented with multiple different approaches, both where the governments are paying for capital investment, but operational maintenance is taken care by the private sector. But they also have unbundled as well as bundled contracts. You also have a very interesting recent one which you described, where the capital investment as well as O&M is likely to come. And then the private sector, do you think will recover directly from the citizen? Is that right? Money
Yes.
Yes. So, I mean, this is like a equivalent of our toll roads of India. So just
Yes.
they are creating the assets, managing the assets, as well as recovering the money directly from the users. So that's the model
Exactly.
they are experimenting with. I think these lessons are very, very useful. Thank you very much. Now I invite, before we take questions, I would now invite Mr. Manas to share his experiences as well as perspectives on financing sanitation, particularly public-private partnerships.
Thank you, Professor Chari. Thank you, Malini, for inviting us. Can I share a presentation? Let me just do that here. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Show full screen.
Can you see the full screen?
No, so we are seeing the slide.
Yeah, as you can see the slide.
Yeah, we can see the full screen.
Okay, all right, great. So fantastic. Thank you very much. Nice to talk to all of you. I work with BORDA, which is a non-profit organization which has been working on sanitation and FSM for many years. We're also a partner of CDD Society, which many of you may have heard of. And as also one of the people involved in setting up a company called Blue Water Company. The idea being, how do we take black and gray and all kinds of various colored water and make it blue again from a reuse perspective. This is a photo. Has my screen changed?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So this is a photo of a treatment plant, a fecal sludge treatment plant we set up in Leh in Ladakh in 2017. It's about designed for 12 KLD, 12,000 liters per day. Because of the local climatic conditions, it can take in 15,000 liters because it's very hot and dry over there. Very sunny, not hot, but sunny. The total plant capital cost was little under 1 crore of rupees. And it costs about, the plant itself, just the treatment plant costs about 6 lakh rupees a year to maintain. And I'll tell you about the overall structure. So that's another photo over there. Now, very briefly, what is the project all about? The municipality came to us after seeing some of the work we had done in Devanhalli, and they needed an urgent solution because some German researchers looking at the, who were studying groundwater, were starting to find E. coli samples in the groundwater. And at that point, especially, Leh was almost 80–90% dependent on their groundwater. People would use bore wells and drink the water without purification because it's supposed to be such good water. Being a tourist town and from a health perspective, they wanted an urgent solution. They were developing a sewer system, but when that would be completed, when it would be operationalized, which parts of the town it would actually cover, how many houses would be able to connect to it, nobody knew. So they wanted an urgent solution. Through work that Borda had done in Ladakh many years ago, we had very strong relationships and trust over there because the government had, of course, none of the people in the present government knew that work. I mean, they were not there at the time of that work. But there's a sense that there's a German NGO, they're very good, they're very trustworthy, they're very competent. So we had the benefit of that relationship. And that was very important. We very quickly, now, they have a 5–6 month construction window. This was already in April or March when they approached us. And we created a very quick 5-year PPP agreement. It was the first that sort of structure in India with a 2-year extension clause on the consent of both parties. Simply because they didn't have the capital necessary. I mean, they could have taken out the capital, but it had taken them 1.5 years to get permission to allocate budget and stuff, right? And they didn't have the time. So this was the quickest way to do it. The Municipal Committee of Leh and the Ladakh Development Authority, they allotted the land and they gave us absolutely every support you can imagine. And I'll talk about that. Blue Water Company was to invest in the fecal sludge treatment plant. And then we were to take over the suction truck that was owned by the municipality and provide scheduled FSM services across the whole town. The main customers were hotels because, a lot of households, they have dry toilets or they've got very, very small pits. The hotels use obviously much more water, therefore the groundwater pollution potential is much greater. So the main end customer were the hotels, and we worked out a business plan and they agreed to pay 4,000 rupees per year per septic tank to have it cleaned. And it was scheduled to be cleaned every year because remember the problem was groundwater pollution, not just that septic tank gets full, it should be cleaned on time, right? So from a abundance, a caution, we said, let's just do it every year. The idea was that the Municipal Committee of Leh, MCL, will keep 10% of this revenue and 90% will be paid to Blue Water Company when they do a job. Okay, I'll explain how it works. MCL puts in no investment at all. So basically they're getting 10% revenue for doing, no capital and very little work. The fecal sludge treatment plant was inaugurated less than 4 months after the first conversation that we had with the municipality. Not from the time we signed a contract, not from the time that we sent them a proposal, from the first conversation, when they invited us to Leh to say, come and see if FSM will work here or what we should do. In 4 months, the FSTP was built and operational. How did this happen? And since then, under our services, we have been doing roughly about 5 times the number of septic tank cleanings on a daily basis compared to what the municipality was doing earlier. What this means is that a lot of players were doing illegal cleaning because there's only one suction truck in town, right, which was the municipality. So either the municipal truck was being used in off hours by somebody to do cleaning without the municipality knowing or getting revenue, or it was being done through manual mechanisms. But certainly, I think we have at least more than doubled, maybe more than tripled the number of genuine cleaning. Because people just don't clean their tanks, but it was leaching into the groundwater, and that was creating the problem. Blue Water Company has been profitable operationally, but chances that even after 7 years, we may not earn back our full investment that we made because this was done in such a rush. There were a lot of pressures, so that's okay. We may lose some money, but most companies will not be happy about that. The process is very, very simple. If you look at it, the yellow boxes are the municipality's responsibility. The blue boxes are Blue Water's responsibility. We create a monthly cleaning schedule of which hotels to clean. The municipality issues a notice saying that on this date, the truck is going to come. Generally, we try to follow this process. We go beforehand to check the site to make sure that the truck can go because it's a hilly town, there are slopes, there are blockages. Is the septic tank reachable, accessible? So that our team is ready, they know what to expect. Otherwise, your truck goes there and then your truck is stuck for 2 hours. It's dead time, right? We send a reminder to the customer 1 or 2 days in advance. Usually speak to them, make sure that somebody will be there, everything is okay. And then we show up there. Usually at this point, we already know if it's accessible or not. If in the pre-visit, the septic tank is not accessible for whatever reason, we change the schedule around. Typically we clean the tank, customer signs, we take it to the FSTP. We then at the end of the month give the municipality a list. These are the customers that we cleaned. Here's the signature. And then they check that those customers are paid in advance. And then they release 90% of the payment to us. Sorry, just 1 minute, please. Yeah. Sometimes when we go over there, there's some new blockage, road construction, the person is not available, some crisis at the hotel, in which case you have to come back a second time. And if even the second time they're not ready to have the septic tank cleaned, then we have the right to issue a notice and charge a fine. We as in the municipality would have to do that. It's been done very, very rarely. Now, just quickly go to sort of the PPP aspect of it. So the public-private partnership is we invested, we operate, municipality provided land, municipality provides support, and there's a customer who pays, and we share the revenue. Right. So very, very clean, very simple structure. On the back end financing, we were able to raise money from an investor to make this investment. So we didn't have to go through complex process of getting a bank loan and so on. We were a startup. We wouldn't have gotten a bank loan anyways. Nothing to do with the counterparts, this thing. Just we were too small a company to get a bank loan, but we were able to find an investor who was interested in this project. Now, what are some of the challenges we have faced in the last 4 odd years of operations? I mean, of course, the whole COVID period has been one problem, but leaving that aside, we got tremendous support. As you know, we went 4 months, we were operational. There was huge amount of support for this. But, over time, you got a new municipal administrator and then another municipal administrator. They don't know the history. They never got any of the glory and the praise and the fame for this project. So they get less interested in this. There's one more infrastructure in town. Who cares? Okay, and that did happen. The direct result of that was at one point we had a 5-month delay in payment. Now it sounds worse than it is because the monsoon in the winter time you have to close down for almost 3 months. So it wasn't truly 5 months, but still we had to follow up a lot. And then the payment was released to us all in one go. But we had to apply pressure. We have good relationships. We could do it. But otherwise, for a company, if your head office in Bangalore or Bombay, to apply pressure or to make requests in Leh, it just becomes more headache, and then it increases the cost of doing business over there. We found that due to the climate, which we had underestimated, our productivity was lower because of the cold season, and also the operating costs were higher. You had to make extra provisions for the staff. The diesel would freeze up. All kinds of problems, right? Your diesel mileage is almost 50% of what you get because of high altitude, you get very low mileage over there. So our costs went higher than we expected, but that was nothing to do with the PPP. That's just that we had to go in very quickly because of the circumstances. Customer interest remained high. Never had a problem with the customers saying we don't want to clean it. Why should we clean it? It is not full. In that sense, we got tremendous cooperation from the customers, and we found new customers. So the army came to us saying, our own people don't like to clean our septic tanks. Can you do it for us? And we were able to sign a contract and use some spare capacity to serve them. Now we did start running into capacity shortages, but the question was, should we expand or not? Now under the contract, we could expand, but remember they were also building a sewer network and we weren't sure when it will come online, what will happen to demand after that. And therefore we kept delaying this capital investment decision because the town themselves was not clear about what is going to happen when the sewer network will come up, what will be demand, how much can they pay us. So that lack of an overall plan impeded reduced our ability to provide the right level of service. And now finally the government has decided once the sewer network is up and running, they know exactly who is connecting, who's not. They have in fact agreed to build a new FSTP, not in a PPP structure, but they're going to build a second FSTP in Leh. And by then our contract will be over the 5-year term, and they'll give a unified contract to run both of them to a single party sometime next year. Key question remains, is it really helping the groundwater pollution, which is the original problem? Evidence is mixed, so we are not sure about that. After all, even if you clean a septic tank every year, you're only collecting about 5 to 8% of the water that goes into the tank. The remaining 90% odd water is still leaking into the ground, right? So it's not clear what the pollution impact is. And the second is a 5-year contract the right duration? And I'll just talk about that. So some of our observations from this project and other projects where we have worked are, one is, the continuous interest of the municipality is very important. And this tends to wane, as we said, as we also experienced, when people change, they get less interested in what was done before them. They are more interested in what they are going to do. So we need to have the orientation that operating systems, running systems is as important as building new stuff. But obviously, that tends to not happen. Secondly, you need empowered officers. Okay, and I'll share something with you. We went from the first visit of our team was in end of April 20th. On May 1st or May 2nd or so, May 4th, we sent them a full proposal of how this would work with a draft contract. May 10th, they said, fine, this works. They released a tender proposal right away. So very simple, because all they said is, we have this much sludge, you got to build the system and treat it. This is the parameters we expect. Very, very simple tender they floated. They gave a 2-week period. Nobody applied, which wasn't surprising given the location, the small size of the project, etc. But, almost, before we actually signed the contract, they allotted the land. They sent us water. They sent us a JCB. They gave us an electricity connection. The construction work started almost a week or 10 days before the contract was finally signed. And that was because the officers were empowered to do this. There was an urgency and there was a trusting relationship between us. Okay. Now, small scale PPPs tend to get difficult because the transaction cost, the planning, it just becomes very expensive compared to the size of the project, which is why I think, when you're doing bundled projects, giving contracts of 10 towns, 8 towns to one party, it starts making sense because then the transaction cost, the financing, the headache of raising finance, etc., becomes justified for a larger amount, which it isn't if it's 1 crore, 2 crores, 2.5 crores, right? Sometimes in those cases, a simple works contract, O&M contract is easier. This tendering process tends to be a problem. I mean, if you talk to a private company, let's say, for example, and I think, many of you in government will also agree, even when you're doing something at home, right? If you have to do some home improvement work, you don't raise a tender and then tell them, give us a bid in a closed envelope and we'll open it and tell you if you win, right? You invite the person, they look, you talk, you discuss, you see what to do, and then you sort of award it. So I think for PPPs, especially where there's trust is needed, it's a long-term relationship, there's investment involved. I think a process where you negotiate the contract maybe with 2 parties and then give it to one is better than this closed envelope process. I understand the issues about corruption and transparency and all that, but I think this process leads to suboptimal outcomes, very often. So maybe the waste is actually greater than what we save through prevention of corruption or transparency or whatever the goals are. What can be done about it is a different issue. I'm just saying this is an issue, at least from a private sector perspective. Integrated contracts work better, especially if it's a small town where you have 1 or 2 trucks and FSTP. Just one. Sorry, kids on Saturday evening. So outsourcing the trucks and the FSTP together, then that way as a municipality, you have only one party to monitor. There's no dispute between them. It is simpler. And also from a private player's perspective, you get to optimize your labor a little bit. If I need labor just for the FSTP, somebody has got labor just to operate a truck, there's more coordination problem and more labor cost. I'll skip this one. It's kind of a subtle point. I think, in building, we tend to, in government projects, we tend to say 25 years from now, what will be the population, what will be the need, let's build that system today. And often what you end up with is something that is oversized for today. And your costs are your construction and your O&M costs are going to be much more than you need to be spending today. And whatever technology enhancement opportunities you get in those 25 years, you lose because you kind of built your system for 25 years. Especially when one is going down the PPP route, having the flexibility to build, but then build the enhanced capacity 3-4 years from now, 5 years from now is very important. But here financing becomes a problem because the government will say, oh, we don't know what capital we'll have, what budget we'll have 5 years from now. So abhi jo karna hai kar do, right? So in the PPP, because you've got private financing, you can give that flexibility and overall the O&M cost and the capital cost can actually come down if the contract allows it. But if the contract says this is a PPP to build 32 KLD, when today's demand is 16 KLD, then you kind of lose that opportunity. You end up wasting money and using old technology. Okay. Contracts should be designed to solve the problem. Okay, now we had a certain problem. There's a time limit. You have only 4-5 months, 6 months construction window. You have a water, pollution problem. So you know each other. The parties know each other somewhat. I mean, of course, it was a public contract, but they kind of knew that nobody's going to come to Leh to build this, right? In 2017 at least. So we were able to design the contract so that the problem gets solved. And that again comes back to the issue of trust and negotiation and discussion. We sat down with the hotel owners, had a 3-way discussion, set the tariff with them, explained it to them, got their buy-in. And in a pure paper-based contract, you can't get this stuff. You won't get you won't get the best solution. And therefore, to understand the problem first is very important, the constraints of all the stakeholders, and then to design a solution with good partners. Typically, of course, especially from a small company perspective, most government contracts tend to be very one-sided. The onus is largely on you. Then what do people do? What do entrepreneurs do? They have to find a way to wiggle through it, right? They want to cut corners. They will overpromise. They'll find ways to hide if they have to underdeliver. It just creates a very unhappy outcome at the end of it. So, I think negotiating that contract in a very open way is very, very helpful if it can be done. Now, why are municipality or municipal projects not bankable or investable, right? I mean, that's, I think, comes to the core of the problem. It's not about money is not there, but sometimes money is not there to pay on time. But sometimes it's just, people just raise problems and delay payments. And, so I think that whole attitude, where state governments have got the attitude of saying, pay, if it is due, just pay it on time, don't hold back. I think that's very important. One structure we had proposed, and I think some states or some places may have taken it up, is that 80% of the payment is immediately released, and then the remaining 20% can be after checking, adjusting, crossing out, all that. And then that becomes the excuse to delay payments for 3 months, right? But especially for small company, for small projects, it just becomes, you just say, look, the headache is more than the profit. You won't get good players coming and participating in your tenders. So this becomes a nice in-between mechanism. You release bulk of the payment, private players happy, then the government can do their analysis and checking before releasing the remainder. They're usually decent, good local players. See, FSM is not a very complicated service, right? Once you know what to do, or you've got a good consultant, or you have somebody like a ASCII or a CDD or somebody who knows the work, it's actually not that hard to do it well. So I think there's a lot of merit in inviting local players, doing some training, getting them bought into it. But then monitoring local players is sometimes difficult because there are relationships, they know the system, they know the people, they know how to work around the system sometimes. But I think if we can involve local players and get them to bid for contracts and do it the right way, that usually saves money and gets you better insight, a better participation. And as Professor Chari said, right, what are you looking for in a PPP? You want capital, you want the skills and technology, and you want to improve the outcomes. And I would say that really a good PPP, the first goal should be that we want to improve the outcomes and the accountability. The second goal should be we want the right skills, the right technology, etc. And the third should be we want capital. If you go after a PPP because of capital, it's kind of like buying a cow because you want milk, right? It's easier to still break your head and get financing from somewhere, but then choose the right player instead of trying to staple it, saying we want the player who's got the right skills and the right money in a situation where we are struggling financially. That that affects the PPP structure anyways, because your future payments will may not happen on time, and people will build that into their pricing. They'll charge you more because of the capital risk, right? So I think one should be clear about what you really want and therefore structure the contract accordingly. I think integrating FSM into the broader sanitation system, whether it's grey water, solid waste, sewer network, makes sense. If you look at Manila Water, in the early days especially, I found their model very interesting, because in Manila, Philippines, the same company operates the water supply system, the sewer system, and the fecal sludge management. Your economies of scale become wonderful, right? Because you've got trucks, you've got people, you've got trained staff, you've got equipment, and now you can distribute that across all these services instead of doing only FSM. Now, typically in our cities, FSM is where there is no sewer network, although some cities have got both. So at least, looking at stormwater services, solid waste management, if those can be clubbed, it improves the economics and the quality of the entire service. And then lastly, I would say that, if the city doesn't have a clear roadmap, a vision, a plan, trying to plonk these infrastructure and services piecemeal becomes very difficult, because then you keep replicating costs and human resources, and then you have, you build this over here, but you didn't plan for what you're going to do 2 years from now. So I think that whole urban planning process, whether it's a city sanitation plan, a city vision, a city development plan, if that is in place, it makes the whole process smoother. Like I said, for 2 years or 3 years, 2 years, we've been saying that we should increase the FSTP capacity. But the government didn't know what's happening on sewerage, and therefore nobody could take that call of making that investment of another 1 or 1.5, 2 crore rupees. If there was a clear city plan and roadmap, and they knew how many people will connect to sewer, how many will not, what will be the demand, this decision could have been made much earlier, and things would have been smoother. Because we did have some, because COVID came in, it wasn't such a big issue, because last year there was no hotels, right? Everything was shut. This year also till July, everything was shut. But had business continued, had tourism continued the way it was in 2018-19, last year we would have faced a lot of hell, because people would want the service and we wouldn't have the capacity for it. So that's what I have. I think on my first slide, what I've done is that underlined the word partnership. And I think that's what people tend to forget, that really a PPP is about partnership. And if the private party and the public party cannot be partners, then to make a PPP work well is difficult. So I would urge all of you to invest time in creating that partnership. And I think then if you find the right partner, you will also enjoy contracting it out. They will enjoy working for you. Citizens get the benefits. And that's how we move forward as Indian towns and cities. So thank you very much.